situación es aún más crítica. Esos motores generan poco torque a bajas revoluciones y simplemente no fueron diseñados para arrancones en velocidades largas. La única excepción real es en terrenos de arena, lodo o nieve, donde arrancar en segunda puede evitar que las llantas patinen. Pero en el asfalto de la ciudad, en el estacionamiento del centro comercial o en la salida del trabajo, la regla está clara. Primera velocidad siempre para salir desde cero. El clutch y tu bolsillo te lo van a agradecer. Error número 10. Bajar las cuestas en punto muerto creyendo que ahorras gasolina. Este es el gran mito que cuesta caro y encima pone vidas en riesgo. La lógica parece tener sentido. Si el motor no está trabajando, no está consumiendo gasolina, equivocado. Todos los carros vendidos en México en los últimos 20 años tienen inyección electrónica. Cuando el carro está en movimiento, con una velocidad metida, y quitas el pie del acelerador, el sistema simplemente corta la inyección de gasolina. El consumo baja a prácticamente cero. Ahora, cuando metes punto muerto, el motor necesita funcionar de forma independiente, consumiendo gasolina para mantener el ralentí. O sea, gastas más en punto muerto que con velocidad metida sin acelerar. Y además del mayo, consumo, pierdes el freno de motor, que es justo lo que ayuda a controlar la velocidad en las bajadas sin sobrecargar los frenos. En bajadas largas, como las de la autopista México-Cuernavaca, los puertos de montaña en Puebla o cualquier tramo de carretera serrana en los estados del norte o del sur. Esa diferencia puede significar frenos sobrecalentados o, en el peor de los casos, pérdida de control del vehículo. Así que anota la regla de oro para las bajadas. Mantén una velocidad metida compatible con tu marcha, quita el pie del acelerador y deja que el freno de motor actúe. Usa el freno convencional solo para ajustes complementarios. Eso es más económico, más seguro y preserva el sistema de frenos. Llegamos a los 3 últimos errores y son quizás los más ignorados de todos. Pero antes, aprovecha y comenta aquí abajo, ¿cuál error te sorprendió más hasta ahora? Y si todavía no te suscribiste al canal, hazlo ahora, porque los próximos errores son los más caros de descubrir en la práctica en error. Número 11. Olvidar cambiar el líquido de frenos. Este es el que más toma por sorpresa a la gente porque parece no tener relación con el clutch, pero sí la tiene. En carros con caja manual y clutch hidráulico, que es la gran mayoría de los modelos vendidos en México hoy, como el Nissan Versa, Chevrolet Aveo, Volkswagen Vento, Kia Rio, Toyota Yaris y Seat Ibiza. El mismo líquido de frenos que alimenta las pinzas y el cilindro. Maestro de freno también es el responsable de accionar el sistema hidráulico del clutch. Con el tiempo ese líquido va absorbiendo humedad del ambiente y acumulando residuos internos. Cuando se contamina, pierde eficiencia. El clutch empieza a responder lento, el pedal se siente esponjoso, la distancia de accionamiento cambia y en casos graves el sistema puede fallar por completo. Lo recomendado por los fabricantes es cambiar el líquido de frenos y clutch cada 2 años o cada 30,000 kilómetros. Lo que ocurra primero, este servicio cuesta en promedio entre 300 y 600 pesos dependiendo del taller y del tipo de líquido, comparado con el costo de reemplazar el sistema hidráulico del clutch, que puede superar los 5,000 pesos. Es una inversión ridículamente pequeña y probablemente nunca habías pensado en esto antes, ¿verdad? Mejor número 12, cambiar solo el disco del clutch para ahorrar. Este es el pecado del mantenimiento barato que sale caro. Mucha gente le pide al mecánico que solo cambie el disco, que es la pieza más desgastada y más barata del conjunto. El mecánico obedece, tú pagas menos, sales satisfecho. 2 meses después, ya estás de regreso. El kit de clutch está compuesto por 3 piezas que trabajan juntas y se desgastan juntas. El disco, que es la parte que ves desgastada, el plato de presión, también llamado cubierta de clutch o prensa, que presiona el disco contra el volante del motor, y el valero de empuje, también llamado colín o buje de clutch. Si cambias solo el disco y dejas el plato y el valero viejos, estás poniendo una pieza nueva en un conjunto desgastado. El plato puede estar con presión irregular, el valero puede tener juego, el disco nuevo va a sufrir un desgaste anormal por culpa de sus compañeros viejos, y en poco tiempo vas a estar pagando otra vez por la mano de obra de abrir la caja, que es la parte más cara del servicio. El cambio completo siempre es más barato a largo plazo, y siempre pídele al mecánico que también revise el cilindro esclavo del clutch durante el servicio. Si tiene fuga o desgaste, cámbialo junto y ahórrate otro viaje al taller en dinero. Y llegamos al error 13 y último. Este es el más peligroso de todos. Pisar el freno y el clutch juntos en situaciones de emergencia. Parece instintivo. Pasa algo adelante. Te tensas y pisas todo al mismo tiempo. Freno, clutch, a veces hasta el acelerador equivocado. En el asfalto seco, está mal. En piso mojado, es verdaderamente peligroso. Cuando pisas el clutch junto con el freno, desacoplas el motor de las ruedas y eliminas el freno de motor instantáneamente. El sistema de freno convencional tiene que hacer todo el trabajo solo, y en carros sin ABS o con ABS antiguo, eso puede resultar en bloqueo de ruedas, pérdida de dirección y derrape. En días de lluvia, que en México significa prácticamente todo el temporal de junio a septiembre en ciudades como Ciudad de México, Veracruz, Villahermosa y Oaxaca. El asfalto mojado con aceite de motor que gotean los carros viejos crea una combinación extremadamente resbalosa. La diferencia entre controlar y perder el carro puede ser exactamente ese detalle de pisar o no el clutch. La técnica correcta en situaciones de emergencia es frenar primero con firmeza y de forma progresiva, y solo pisar el clutch cuando la velocidad ya esté muy baja. Eso mantiene el freno de motor activo durante la mayor parte de la desaceleración y le da mucha más estabilidad al carro. En carros con ABS, el sistema se encarga del bloqueo automáticamente, pero el freno de motor sigue ayudando y debe preservarse lo más posible. Ahora que llegaste hasta aquí, tienes una ventaja real sobre la mayoría de los conductores mexicanos. Conoces los 13 errores que destruyen el clutch, la caja, los frenos y el motor por dentro. Y lo más importante, sabes cómo evitar cada uno de ellos. No se trata de manejar despacio o con miedo. Se trata de manejar con conciencia. Un conductor que conoce la mecánica de su propio carro ahorra dinero. Maneja con más seguridad y conserva mucho mejor el vehículo que aquel que solo descubre los problemas cuando el carro lo deja tirado en la autopista. Y hay algo más que casi nadie hace, pero que marca una diferencia enorme: el uso correcto del freno de motor. Al contrario de lo que mucha gente cree, el freno de motor no es bajar en punto muerto. Es exactamente lo contrario. El freno de motor es cuando mantienes el carro metido en una velocidad, quitas el pie del acelerador y usas la compresión interna del motor para reducir la velocidad del carro de forma progresiva. Bien usado, en bajadas largas o llegadas a curvas, alivia los frenos convencionales. Reduce el consumo de gasolina a prácticamente cero durante la desaceleración y mantiene el carro estable y controlable. El secreto es nunca pisar el clutch durante el freno de motor. Pisar el clutch cancela el efecto de inmediato y le regresa toda la responsabilidad al freno convencional y al disco de clutch. Mantén el pie lejos del pedal hasta el momento exacto de cambiar velocidad o parar por completo. Ahora, cuéntame de los 3 errores que vimos hoy. ¿Cuántos ya habías cometido sin saberlo? Comenta aquí abajo con honestidad, sin pena, porque sus comentarios me dicen qué producir para seguir ayudando. Y si conoces a alguien que acaba de sacar la licencia, que vive en una colonia llena de cuestas o que siempre anda quejándose del clutch de su carro, mándale este video ahora mismo. Puede ser que hoy le salves el clutch a alguien. No te pierdas los próximos videos del canal, donde vamos a mostrar 19 funciones ocultas que los carros populares mexicanos tienen, pero que casi nadie usa. Y también 10 hábitos de mantenimiento que duplican la vida útil del motor. Si este video te ayudó, el like es la mejor forma de decírmelo. Suscríbete al canal, activa la campanita de notificaciones y hasta el próximo video. For a few days, until the habit forms, sounds silly, but it works. And speaking of automatic transmissions, if you have friends who drive automatics and think they're safe from similar mistakes, we have a video on this channel covering exactly those errors. I'll leave it in the cards so you can share it with them. Mistake number 5. Lugging the engine at low RPMs. This is the classic move from the driver who wants to look effortless without shifting down. You're in second or third gear. The engine is at 1,000 or 1,200 RPM, and you press the gas hard. The car hesitates, shudders, swallows it, and off it goes. Feels like power. In reality, the engine is begging for help. When you demand power from the engine below its ideal operating range, which in popular economy, cars with a 1.5 or 2.0 liter engine sits between 2,000 and 3,500 RPM. The internal components take a significant beating. Connecting rods, pistons, the crankshaft, and even the lubrication system all suffer. In older engines or those with irregular maintenance, this habit can cause pre-ignition, commonly called engine knock or pinging. You hear a metallic ticking that sounds like marbles rattling inside the engine. That sound is literally the fuel-air mixture igniting at the wrong moment, creating vibrations that damage pistons and connecting rods over time in budget economy cars, which are already built with tighter tolerances to cut costs. This problem can show up sooner than you'd expect. The fix is simple. If you want to accelerate hard, downshift before you floor it. If you're in fourth and the engine is below 2,000 RPM, drop to third before demanding power. The engine responds faster, fuel economy improves, and the parts last a lot longer. It's a win all around. We're halfway through the mistakes. So tell me, which of these 5 have you already committed? Drop the numbers in the comments. Could be 1, could be all 5. No judgment here. And if you haven't liked the video yet, now's the time. It only gets more valuable from here. Mistake number 6. Using engine braking on every single deceleration. Wait, isn't engine braking recommended? Yes, but not in every situation. The habit of downshifting every time you need to slow down going into a curve, approaching a red light, pulling into a parking lot might seem like something a performance driver does. But in everyday driving, it quietly destroys your clutch. In racing, drivers do use this technique to keep the car in the right torque range through corners. But at the end of every race, the entire clutch gets thrown out and replaced in your daily commute through Chicago, Dallas, or Atlanta. Doing this dozens of times an hour adds up to enormous wear on the disc, pressure plate, and release bearing. The right approach for normal driving is to let the brakes do their job. Approaching a curve or a light, lift off the gas, let engine braking work naturally, and then progressively apply the brakes. Only downshift when your speed is already low enough for the next gear, or when you need to accelerate again right after. This approach is smoother, more economical, and protects both the braking system and the clutch. Remember, brake pads are a whole lot cheaper to replace than a clutch kit. Mistake number 7. Braking without pressing the clutch when you're almost at a stop. This one is a guaranteed way to stall out in public and have everyone honking at you. The classic situation happens when the car is moving at low speed. Around 5 to 10 miles per hour, you'll brake lightly without pressing the clutch, and the engine just dies. Lurch, sudden stop, honking from the car behind you. Red face. This happens because at low speed, when the engine is at low RPM and you brake without disconnecting the transmission, the engine can't maintain the minimum idle speed and simply stalls. Beyond being embarrassing, it can be dangerous at intersections, speed bumps, or driveways with limited visibility. The rule is simple. When you're slowing down and you notice the car is dropping below 10 miles per hour, press the clutch before or at the same time as the brake. That disconnects the engine from the wheels and prevents the stall. Anyone who's never done this can throw the first stone. But now that you know, there's no more excuse. Mistake number 8. Parking on a hill with the transmission in neutral. This is the kind of mistake you'll only regret if the worst happens. The pegging brake alone may not be enough to hold the car indefinitely, especially if the brake is worn or out of adjustment. It's happened in cities all across America. Cars found 2 blocks down from where they were parked. Cars that rolled into walls, other vehicles, or in the worst cases, into pedestrians. The fix is to leave the transmission in gear as a mechanical lock. Parking uphill, engage first gear before releasing the parking brake. Parking downhill, put it in reverse. That creates mechanical resistance that works alongside the parking brake. As a bonus tip, turn your wheels toward the curb. Going downhill, turn toward the sidewalk. Going uphill, turn away from it. That way, if the car does roll, the curb itself acts as a barrier. Sounds like overkill, but in cities like San Francisco, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and Denver, where hills are part of daily life, this precaution can prevent serious accidents. If you've ever seen or heard about a car that rolled down a hill on its own, share it in the comments. There's always a story worth telling. Mistake number 9. Pulling away in second or third gear to save time. Feels like you're skipping a step. In practice, you're putting an insane amount of stress on the clutch disc. When the car is at a standstill and you pull away in a higher gear, the engine has to overcome initial inertia with far less torque than first gear provides. The clutch disc has to slip longer and harder to get the job done. The result is that characteristic smell of a burning clutch, the one you sometimes notice but prefer to ignore. In smaller economy cars with 1.5 or 2.0-liter engines, this is even more critical. These engines produce little torque at low RPMs and simply weren't designed for starts in high gears. The only real exception is loose terrain like gravel, mud, or snow, where starting in second can prevent wheels on city asphalt. In a parking garage or pulling out of a lot, the rule is clear. First gear. Every time you're pulling away from a stop, your clutch and your wallet will thank you. Mistake number 10. Coasting downhill in neutral thinking it saves fuel. This is the big myth that costs money and puts lives at risk. The logic seems to make sense. If the engine isn't working, it isn't burning fuel. Wrong. Every car sold in the US in the last 20+ years has electronic fuel injection. When the car is moving with a gear engaged and you lift off the throttle, the system simply cuts fuel injection. Fuel consumption drops to essentially zero. Now, when you put it in neutral, the engine has to run independently, burning fuel to maintain idle speed. In other words, you actually burn more fuel in neutral than you do while coasting in gear. And beyond the extra fuel use, you lose engine braking, which is exactly what helps you control speed on a descent without overworking your brakes. On lone descents, like the mountain grades on I-70 through Colorado, the Appalachians in Virginia, or any stretch of mountain highway, this difference can mean overheated brakes, or in the worst case, loss of vehicle control. So here's the golden rule for down. Keep a gear engaged that matches your speed, lift off the throttle, and let engine braking do the work. Use the conventional brake only for fine adjustments. It's more economical, safer, and protects your braking system. We're down to the last 3 mistakes, and these are maybe the most overlooked of all. But before that, drop a comment below with which mistake surprised you the most so far. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now, because the next mistakes are the most expensive ones to discover the hard way. Mistake number 11, forgetting to change the brake fluid. This one catches people off guard because it seems unrelated to the clutch, but it is. In cars with a manual transmission and a hydraulic clutch, which is the vast majority of manual cars sold in the US today, including the Honda Civic, Subaru WRX, Mazda MX-5, Ford Mustang, and Toyota GR86. The same brake fluid that feeds the calipers in the Master. Cylinder is also responsible for operating the hydraulic clutch system. Over time, this fluid absorbs moisture from the air and accumulates internal residue. When it's contaminated, it loses effectiveness. The clutch starts responding slowly, the pedal feels spongy, the engagement point shifts, and in serious cases, the system can fail completely. Manufacturers recommend changing the brake and clutch fluid every 2 years or every 20,000 miles, whichever comes first. This service typically costs between $80 and $200 depending on the shop and the fluid type, compared to the cost of replacing the entire hydraulic clutch system, which can exceed $1,500. It's a ridiculously small investment, and you probably never even thought about it before. Did you? Mistake number 12. Replacing only the clutch disc to save money. This is the cardinal sin of cheap maintenance that ends up costing more. A lot of people ask the shop to replace just the disc, which is the most visibly worn and least expensive piece in the set. The mechanic does it, you pay less, you leave happy. 2 months later, you're back! The clutch kit is made up of 3 parts that work together and wear together. The disc, which is the part you can see is worn. The pressure plate, also called the clutch cover, which presses the disc against the flywheel. And the release bearing, also called the throwout bearing. If you replace only the disc and leave the pressure plate and bearing old, you're putting a new part into a worn assembly. The pressure plate may have uneven pressure, the bearing may have play, the new disc will wear abnormally because of its worn partners, and before long you'll be paying for the labor to pull the transmission apart again, which is the most expensive part of the job. A full kit replacement is always cheaper in the long run, and always ask the shop to inspect the clutch slave cylinder while they're in there. If it's leaking or worn, replace it at the same time and save yourself another trip to the shop. And we've arrived at the 13th and final mistake. This is the most dangerous of all. Pressing the brake and the clutch together in an emergency, it feels instinctive. Something happens in front of you. You tense up and hit everything at once, brake, clutch, sometimes even the wrong pedal. On dry pavement, it's bad. On wet pavement, it's genuinely dangerous. When you press the clutch alongside the brake, you disconnect the engine from the wheels and instantly kill engine braking. The conventional braking system has to do all the work on its own, and in cars without ABS or with older ABS, this can result in wheel lockup, loss of steering, and a skid. On rainy days, which in the US means practically half of fall and winter in cities like Seattle, Nashville, Portland, and Miami, wet asphalt mixed with oil leaking from older cars creates an extremely slippery surface. The difference between regaining control and losing it can come down to exactly that detail, whether or not you press the clutch. The correct technique in an emergency is to brake first, firmly, and progressively, and only press the clutch when your speed is already very low. This keeps engine braking active for most of the deceleration and gives the car far more stability. In cars with ABS, the system handles wheel lockup automatically, but engine braking still helps and should be preserved as long as possible. Now that you've made it this far, you have a real edge over the average American driver. You know the 30 mistakes that destroy the clutch, the transmission, the brakes, and the engine from the inside, and most importantly, you know how to avoid every single one of them. This isn't about driving slow or driving scared. It's about driving smart. A driver who understands the mechanics of their own car saves money, drives safe, and preserves the vehicle far longer than someone who only finds out about problems when the car breaks down on the highway. Oh, and there's one more thing almost nobody does. That makes a huge difference. Using engine braking correctly. Despite what a lot of people think, engine braking is not coasting downhill in neutral. It's exactly the opposite. Engine braking is when you keep the car in gear, lift off the throttle, and use the engine's internal compression to progressively slow the car down. When used properly on long descents or entering curves, it takes pressure off the conventional brakes, reduces fuel consumption to nearly zero during deceleration, and keeps the car stable and in control. The key is never pressing the clutch during engine braking. Pressing the clutch cancels the effect immediately and throws all the responsibility back onto the conventional brakes and the clutch disc. Keep your foot off that pedal until the exact moment you need to shift or come to a complete stop. Now, tell me out of the 30 mistakes we covered today, how many were you making without knowing it? Drop a number in the comments with honesty, no shame, because your comments tell me exactly what to produce to help you even more. And if you know someone who just got their license, or lives in a hilly neighborhood, or keeps complaining about their clutch, send them this video right now. You might just save someone's clutch today. Don't miss the next videos on this channel, where we'll be covering 19 hidden features that most manual car drivers in America have but never use, and 10 maintenance habits that doubled the life of your engine. If this video helped you, the like button is the best way to tell me. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.